My name is Emma Clarke, and I am 29 years old. I was born on a cold February morning in Portland, Oregon, the kind of morning where frost clings to the windows and the world outside looks like it's been dusted with powdered sugar. My mother, Linda, always said the weather that day matched her mood: gray, heavy, unwelcoming. I never quite understood what she meant by that until I was much older. Portland was a city of contradictions, beautiful and broken at the same time, the kind of place where coffee shops stayed open until midnight, where murals covered entire buildings, where rain wasn't just weather, it was a way of life. The smell of wet pavement and pine trees was the first thing I ever knew. It seeped into my bones before I could even form words. We lived in a small house on Maple Street, a narrow two-story with a green door that always stuck in the winter. My father, Robert, had bought it before I was born, proud of the little garden in the back where he tried, and mostly failed, to grow tomatoes every summer. The neighbors had wind chimes that sang every time the breeze came through, and for the longest time that sound meant home to me. I was the second child. My sister Victoria came first, 2 years older, golden-haired, effortlessly everything my mother wanted. I came second, and somewhere in that simple fact lived the entire story of my childhood. I don't remember a specific moment when I realized I was different in my mother's eyes. It wasn't one conversation or one incident. It was 1,000 tiny things. The way she braided Victoria's hair every morning, but told me I was old enough to do my own. The way she saved the last piece of pie for Victoria without thinking twice. The way her eyes lit up when Victoria walked into a room and simply didn't when I did. My father noticed. I could see it in the way he'd quietly set an extra cookie on my plate when Linda wasn't looking. The way he'd sit beside me during dinner when the conversation inevitably turned to Victoria's achievements. He was a gentleman, Robert Clarke, with big hands and a quiet laugh. He worked at a hardware store downtown for 22 years. He smelled like sawdust and coffee, and he gave the best hugs of anyone I have ever known. But he never said anything. That silence would cost both of us more than either of us ever knew. I grew up trying to be invisible and remarkable at the same time, a truly exhausting combination. I stayed quiet enough not to cause trouble, but I worked hard enough that someone, anyone, might notice me. I made straight A's in elementary school. I won a poetry contest in 4th grade. I drew pictures and left them on the kitchen counter, hoping my mother would put them on the fridge the way she put up Victoria's spelling tests and soccer trophies. She never did. I learned to fold myself smaller, to take up less space, to need less, want less, ask for less. Children are remarkable adapters. We find ways to survive the specific shape of our family's love, even when that shape has sharp edges. Portland Elementary fed into Madison Middle School, and those years blur together in my memory like watercolors left in the rain. What I remember most is the art room, room 114, with its smell of acrylic paint and turpentine, its walls covered in student work, its big windows that overlooked the football field. Mrs. Patterson taught art there for 30 years, and she was the first adult outside my family who ever looked at me like I was worth looking at. She held up one of my drawings once, a charcoal sketch of the view from my bedroom window, the neighbor's oak tree in winter, bare branches reaching like fingers against the sky, and she said to the whole class, "This is what it means to see the world." I cried in the bathroom afterward. Not from sadness, from the sheer shock of being seen. By the time high school arrived, I had made a decision, quiet but firm, the way all important decisions are made. I was going to build something with my hands and my eyes. I was going to make things that mattered. I didn't have the vocabulary for it yet, but the feeling was there, lodged in my chest like a compass, needle always pointing the same direction. Jefferson High School sat at the top of a hill overlooking the city. On clear days, rare in Portland, precious because of it, you could see Mount Hood from the third-floor hallway, purple and white against the sky. I walked those hallways for 4 years with a sketchbook under my arm and headphones in my ears,
a girl who existed slightly outside the social world everyone else seemed to navigate effortlessly. I had two friends, Priya, who wanted to be an architect, and Sam, who wanted to be a chef. We ate lunch together every day at the same corner table. We talked about getting out of Portland, not because we didn't love it, but because we understood that loving a place and needing to leave it are not mutually exclusive things. Home, meanwhile, had become a careful performance. Victoria had blossomed into everything Linda had always hoped for: popular, pretty, engaged to a boy from a good family by the time she was a senior. The house revolved around her like a solar system with one sun. I moved through it like a satellite nobody had charted. My father and I had a ritual. Sunday mornings, before anyone else woke up, I would come downstairs and he would already have coffee made. We'd sit at the kitchen table while the house was still quiet, and he'd ask me what I was drawing, what I was thinking, what I was reading. For 1 hour every week, I existed fully. It wasn't enough, but it was something. I graduated high school with honors and a portfolio of artwork that had won 3 regional competitions. Linda came to graduation. She clapped when my name was called. Afterward, she said, "Don't forget to congratulate your sister. She just got her real estate license." I smiled. I said I would. I drove home alone and sat in my car in the driveway for 20 minutes, listening to the rain.
My mom retired at 58, and something happened in retirement that I had not expected. She slowed down. For the first time in as long as I had known her, she did not have the structure of work to organize herself around. The systems and processes that had kept her moving efficiently through her days for 25 years were gone. And in the stillness that followed, she had to sit with things she had been successfully outrunning for 60 years. She called me more, not warmly at first, just more, as if she was taking inventory, as if retirement had given her enough stillness to finally hear things she had been too busy and too organized and too functional to hear before. And then, on Easter Sunday, she stood in a hallway while I had my hands in warm dishwater, and she said something she had never said in 30 years of being my mom. "I know things haven't always been equal between you and Victoria." I kept my hands in the water. "I don't entirely understand how it happened," she said. "I don't think I meant—" She stopped. "That's not an excuse. I know it's not an excuse." "No," I said gently, "it isn't." She looked at me, really looked, the way she had not looked at me in a very long time, if she ever had, like I was someone worth the full attention of her actual eyes. "I'd like to do better," she said, "if you'll let me." I thought about Dr. O'Coffer, about months of careful work, about Margaret's Sunday dinners and Richard asking about my book every week, and the chair I had moved forward into the circle at Easter dinner. "I'd like that too," I said, but slowly and honestly, no more explaining things away. She held my gaze. "Okay," she said. My mom came to my book launch 8 months later. She sat in the front row in a dress she had chosen carefully. I could tell she had chosen it carefully. There was intention in it, the intention of someone who understood this was an occasion that mattered and had dressed accordingly. She listened to me speak about light and belonging and spaces that tell you whether you are expected before a single word is spoken. She listened the whole way through without looking at her phone or shifting in her seat. Afterward, she found me in the small crowd. She was holding my book in both hands, her own copy, which she had bought herself, which Margaret had mentioned to me quietly with the contained gladness of someone who understood exactly what it meant. "I read the introduction last night," she said, "the part about the hallway, about learning that you are expected somewhere." She paused, something complicated moving through her face. "I understand that you had to find that somewhere else," she said. "I understand why." 12 words, more acknowledgement than 30 years had contained. "I wouldn't have missed this," she said, looking around at the bookshop, at the people, at the evidence of the life her daughter had built. And I believed her. I was 22 when I got my first real job, and 29 when I finally understood what it had cost me to get there. The job was at a mid-sized design agency in Seattle called Watershed Creative. I'd applied on a Tuesday, interviewed on a Thursday, and received an offer by the following Monday. Later, I found out that Alan Marsh had called the creative director personally. He never told me. I found out from the creative director herself 3 years into my tenure over drinks at a work event. He said you were the best student he'd taught in 15 years, she told me. I excused myself to the bathroom and stood at the sink for a long moment, looking at my reflection. Alan Marsh had gone to bat for me without telling me, without needing credit, without asking for anything in return. I was still learning, at 25, that this was what real support looked like. Seattle suited me in ways Portland hadn't quite managed. It had Portland's Pacific Northwest soul, the rain, the mountains, the coffee culture taken to philosophical extremes, but it was larger, faster, more anonymous in ways that felt like freedom rather than loneliness. I rented a studio apartment in Capitol Hill, furnished it slowly with things I actually loved, and began the careful, deliberate work of building a life that was entirely mine. Watershed Creative was good work: brand identity, editorial design, some web and digital. I was junior at first, doing production work, cleaning up other designers' files, sitting in on client meetings and taking notes. I was patient. I had learned patience the hard way in a house where waiting quietly was a survival skill. Within 18 months, I was leading my own projects. Within 3 years, I was senior designer. The work taught me things school couldn't. It taught me how to handle a client who didn't know what they wanted, but knew they didn't want what you'd made. It taught me how to defend a creative decision with evidence and confidence, how to kill your darlings when the work demanded it, how to collaborate with people whose aesthetic sensibilities were entirely foreign to yours, and arrive somewhere neither of you could have reached alone. It taught me, more than anything, that I was capable, not just talented, capable, reliable, someone people could count on. That felt revolutionary at 23, 24, 25, to be depended on, to have colleagues who sought my opinion, who saved me a seat in meetings, who remembered how I took my coffee. The small things, always the small things. I was 26 when I started taking freelance clients on the side, book covers mostly, small independent publishers who needed strong visual identities for their titles but couldn't afford agency rates. I loved it. There was something about book cover design specifically that felt like a natural extension of everything I was, the intersection of story and image, the challenge of distilling an entire narrative into a single visual moment. Word spread, the way it does in small creative communities. By 27, I had more freelance work than I could comfortably manage alongside my full-time job. By 28, I had made a decision, terrifying, electrifying, to go independent. I gave my notice on a Monday morning. My creative director took me to lunch and told me I was making the right choice. She also told me that if I ever wanted to come back, there would be a desk for me. I thanked her and meant it. I walked out of Watershed Creative for the last time on a Friday afternoon in October, my portfolio drive in my bag, and 4 years of relationships and reputation in my pocket. By 29, Emma Clarke Design had 3 anchor clients, a wait list, and a small but growing reputation in the Pacific Northwest publishing world. I had built something real. I had built it from nothing, with my own hands, my own eyes, my own stubborn refusal to stop believing that the girl in room 114, the one who cried in the bathroom because a teacher had finally seen her, deserved to take up space in the world. She did. She always had. And somewhere between Portland and Seattle, between a green door that stuck in winter and a studio apartment filled with things she actually loved, she had finally, slowly, begun to believe it.